Michael Avenatti is finally drawing some journalistic scrutiny after an essentially free ride with the media, after the conservative Daily Caller ran a piece on Stormy Daniels' lawyer and his business history, including a dispute over an unpaid $160,000 bill at a coffee company he owned. Avenatti sent the author a threatening letter. If you and your colleagues do not stop with the hit pieces that are full of lies and defamatory statements, I will have no choice but to sue each of you and your publication for defamation. So if I were you, I would tell Mr. Trump to find someone else to fabricate things about me. CNN's Don Lemon asked him about that.
Do you think that that behavior is similar, that you're threatening?
No, I think you're talking apples and oranges. If we encounter journalists that don't get their facts straight by design, don't follow basic standards of journalism, purposely skew stories to fit their own political dialogue and what they want the message to be, we're going to continue to call them out on that.
And when The Hollywood Reporter was working on a column examining whether Avenatti was helping his career more than the cause of his porn star client, the author says, he called me up and became somewhat menacing. At one point, he called me an a-hole with an agenda and accused the lawyers I had spoken to of being jealous of his success. Joining us now to analyze the coverage in Houston, Kristin Tate, a columnist for The Hill and author of How Do I Tax Thee? And in New York, Jessica Tarlov, senior editor at Bustle and a Fox News contributor. Kristin, what's your take on Michael Avenatti, who's been constantly on CNN and MSNBC, now making these threats against journalists?
It's despicable. Avenatti is a partisan hack who's just become completely addicted to TV like a drug, and these networks continue to give him shameless coverage, even though he often doesn't even have anything new to say. CNN put him on their network 74 times in recent weeks. He is now that network's most ubiquitous guest in its history. That speaks volumes about CNN's priorities. Yeah. He's been on MSNBC 54 times. I mean, this media circus, it's really a distraction. And I don't think it does any justice for Stormy Daniels or the law. This is really about Avenatti getting as much media coverage as he can, so that he can get his own TV show.
He's certainly getting that. Oh, the thing about the TV show, just briefly, New York Times reported that a show had been pitched to CNN and MSNBC starring Avenatti and Scaramucci, but both of them have indicated that's not happening. So, Jessica, Avenatti, you know, is doing a job for a client, but he acts offended that journalists would look into his own background, his own business record, when he's made himself such a front and center player.
Yeah, he shouldn't be surprised by this at all, and that's completely within their rights. And what journalists should be doing at this point is looking into a major news story here. I think obviously he's getting himself press, but he is right when he says every time I'm on TV, I am talking about Stormy Daniels, his client. And he is raising an incredibly important issue here with the payoffs here, the hush money, and then whether there was intimidation. He has now said that there could be 2 other women who may come forward. He's continuing to vet them.
Okay, and I know that let me jump in on that point. When he just makes one of these unsubstantiated claims, there may be 2 more women who allege that they had affairs with President Trump. Instead of the anchors saying, yeah, what proof do you have, most of them at least, they say, oh, tell us more.
Yeah, no, I think that he should. I assume that he will get to that point. I personally would not have led with that. But for people to say that he's just on TV to promote himself, he does have a very specific agenda which relates directly back to his client and what President Trump did. And those who say he hasn't accomplished anything, he got the president to admit that he had been lying. Remember when Donald Trump said, this didn't happen, I didn't pay, I don't know this person. Now the president has to admit it. Had to admit it just last week after Rudy Giuliani kind of led us there and said it's coming. And Rudy Giuliani, in fact, even said there could be other women. So we'll see what happens there, but he should not be attacking journalists like this. He sounds Trumpian when he does it. He can go on TV, talk about his client, talk about the real issues here, but don't attack journalists for doing their job.
Kristin, quick thought.
It's completely irresponsible for this man to go on TV and make these unproven claims. But if you want to talk about real issues, the networks, while they busy themselves covering this Avenatti character, they're completely glossing over the issues that actually do matter to the American people, like immigration and the economy. Only 23% of Americans are interested in this Stormy Daniels story. I think this is really a story about the media and the narrative that they're trying to push and their anti-Trump resistance movement.
Well, you know, one of the reasons it seems so one-sided is that Michael Cohen isn't talking, and the lawyer for Michael Cohen isn't saying any much either. So there's been a whole lot of Avenatti. Let me come back to this question about the president's tweet calling White House leakers traitors and cowards. Now, this all started with a leak about White House communications aide Kelly Sadler making the joke about or the crack about John McCain dying. And I can report exclusively that in an Oval Office meeting with the president, he asked her what happened, and he asked her, are you done apologizing? She'd already apologized to Meghan McCain, the senator's daughter. Do you want to apologize more? And she said she did not want to apologize more, and the president agreed with that. So, but the president, who so often talks about fake news, is now acknowledging that White House leakers are a real problem for him. Jessica.
Oh, well, he's actually been acknowledging this for quite some time. It's one of his favorite narratives, in fact, that people are taking private information about him and his administration, exposing it, and also getting it wrong.
Right, but he talks about made-up sources and
Sadler.
made-up sources. And some of these sources are not made up. They're real people who work at 1600 Pennsylvania.
Right. That doesn't make them official traitors. Obviously, that term means something very specific, but we know that this is just Trump language where he uses the first accessible word to describe them. I think the leaks are dangerous, especially when they relate to national security. But he needs to think about the fact that people who work for him are so disgusted with what's going on, are so disturbed by the content of their meetings and the content of the policies and what this administration is doing, that they are going to the press.
You know, I write a lot about these self-destructive leaks in my book, Media Madness, and I do think the president has every right to feel betrayed by people who are either on his payroll or in his orbit, Kristin. And of course, journalists are going to gobble up these leaks when they either advance the story or often they make either White House officials or their boss look bad.
Absolutely. The leaks are infuriating. However, Howie, I think that when Trump talks about the fake news media, he's misdirecting his anger in this case. The leaks are not the fault of the media. They represent a major problem inside of the White House. It's very easy for Trump and his supporters to scream fake news when there's an inconvenient leak. However, a lot of these supporters need to acknowledge that the leaks are coming from Trump's own hand-picked team. You know, I love Trump's unconventional governing style, but there's something to be said for some discipline. I think the White House needs that right now. Yeah, and Trump needs to incentivize his own team to be loyal to him and stop the leaking.
A lot of White House officials have tried to impose that sense of discipline. Great discussion.
Yeah, best
Jessica
of luck.
Tarlov, Kristin Tate, thanks very much for being here this Sunday.
Thanks, Howard.